This is Dan Dix here, reporting for Press for Truth, and I am joined right now with the former Premier of British Columbia, Bill Vander Zalm. Sir, thank you so much for inviting me into your home once again. The last time I was here was way back in 2013, and back then we had a really good conversation about some of the problems we were both seeing within the government, but you know, that was a long time ago. Things have certainly escalated since then. I recall back then, the last question I asked you was, what is this all about? What's the end game agenda here? And your answer was that it's ultimately about control. And in the last 8 years, especially in the last 20 months in particular, we've seen this agenda accelerate to control a great deal. I mean, we have mask mandates now, we have mandatory vaccine passports. We have these strict lockdown measures that have been essentially destroying the economy and wiping out a lot of middle-class mom-and-pop shops. So I'm curious, are you as surprised as I am as to just the speed and the acceleration at which this agenda for control has crept up in just the past 18 or 20 months or so?
I've been asking questions for the last several years. I can't believe what I see happening. It started out with the announcement that the virus was located in China, and they said they didn't know exactly where from or how. They obviously knew. They were lying to us. They continued to lie for a time. Eventually they came out and said, no, it escaped from the lab in Wuhan. However, the escape is questionable. I don't know whether it escaped, whether it was let out, who knows? Everybody's got a different version of it. Some are saying it's a bioweapon of sorts. I don't know. Nobody seems to know. And unfortunately, throughout this whole process over the last several years, no one, our government, nationally, provincially, locally, everywhere, has not been very open with us. It's all been rather secretive. They don't tell us what's happening. They tell us what they want to tell us, but no more. It's not good.
Yeah, well, they've seemed to have not only kept us in the dark, but it seems to have been kind of overreacting to this thing, this virus, which has a 99.97% recovery rate, yet they're still mandating the vaccine passports, for example. What are your thoughts on just this current segregation? It's like a two-tier society of the vax versus the unvax, where you have to have a mandated vax passport to take part in society. If you want to go to a restaurant, you want to go to the bars, you want to go to the sporting events, you're going to have to get the vax pass. What are your thoughts on the mandates that are coming down these days?
Well, that's another thing. I think a lot of people are somewhat upset, and more so every day, with the fact that we're beginning to think maybe there's some other program, there's a different end game here. And I know some people would argue it's all about money, and I know there's people making lots of money during all of this. Certainly the mask makers are making lots of money. Somebody having to clean it up will eventually make lots of money. We know that the chemical companies, the pharmaceutical companies are making fortunes. And then again, I guess there's something beyond that. I think it's so strange that everyone has to be vaccinated. Why does everyone have to be vaccinated? And they'll try to get people in no matter what it takes, as you've already said. They've got various things, coercions happening to try and get people in. Why is that all? So it makes me think maybe there's another end game. And the only end game I see is that somebody's trying to establish a reset. And our own Prime Minister was the first very early on to make a mistake and mentioned this in one of his press releases, that this was an opportunity for the Great Reset. That scares me. When people in government are talking about great resets and they're not consulting with us, the people, as to what this might be, it's scary. Yeah. I know they've got problems. Undoubtedly, the whole world has a problem fiscally. It's a mess. They're printing money and they seem to think it can go on forever. So it's a mess. It's a mess economically. There's no certainty. It is. I don't know what's going to happen. Is it going to be inflation? Is it going to be depression? Is it going to be both? Nobody knows. Then again, morally, the country's going crazy. And this virus isn't helping that, because people are now forbidden oftentimes to go to church or to go in the numbers they might go. It's all of those things together that makes you wonder. I think the end game is fascism, maybe communism. I think communism, in my opinion, is the more likely route that they want to go, because it came out of China. They have a different type of communism there. It's not like Stalin used to have it. It's different. They're playing it a little bit smarter from a communistic standpoint. And I guess when they talk about the Great Reset, they're talking about a globalist type of government, a global government, someplace in Europe or Asia, who knows where. And unfortunately, we won't know. It'll be done without our knowledge, because this COVID could be used to do so many things they couldn't do otherwise.
Right.
But they have to have everybody in, it seems, in order to make it work properly for them. It has to be, if there's a global government, it has to be a communistic or a fascist type of government. You can't have a democracy and rule globally. That won't work. It's got to be dictatorship.
So you see the current talk of the need for a great reset as essentially them bringing about an eventual global communistic world order?
I think it's a global government they've talked about. That's been mentioned a number of times, and I'm not surprised. If they're going to have a global government, it's got to be fascism or communism. The sort of democracy we're accustomed to won't work globally. They can't keep it together that way.
Well, most
dictatorship.
Most people are not going to want to go for such a thing, and I would have thought that there would have been people resisting these things that are happening today. Why do you think there seems to be so many people just acquiescing to this and just going along with this willingly? Can it be blamed on the media? Is it just misinformation, or what do you think is the reasons that a lot of people are just acquiescing to this and going along with it?
I know, it's scary. People are acquiescing. They think there's no other option. There is another option, obviously. But it's, why is it? Well, for one thing, this new type of communism, fascism, or whatever it is they want to establish globally, it seems to be well received by the multi-billionaires. And I can understand we're basically, during this COVID period, doing the little businesses out of business. If this carries on much longer, there won't be any little businesses. It'll be only big corporations, such as you see it in China. In China, the big companies are still flourishing with the blessings of the government, because they can deal with the big corporations. They can't deal with all those little governments. Democracy, free enterprise, in the old sense, doesn't work during that type of system. It's scary stuff, and I don't know why I'm talking about it, but somebody's got to be talking about it. Somebody's got to be talking about it, because they're not leveling with us. So we need to hear all opinions, no matter what they are, in order to get an answer. Because once they do it, it's too late. And the things, if they once take, well, we now see this mandate about having to have passports. Scary stuff. They'll know everything about you. And it'll all be recorded, and it'll be abused and used by government. No good. So it's, the big corporations like it. They won't have to deal with unions. They won't have to deal with protests, because in that sort of society, in a communistic type system, they won't allow protests. And unions won't be there. So that's, the big corporations kind of like it. They can do their own thing. Little businesses are, unfortunately, going to be out. Yeah. And even with the people, you'll have the very wealthy, the middle class will completely disappear, and like in China, the masses are provided for. They get enough food to eat, they get some sort of accommodation, they get health care provided them, there's a strict law and order system, so the average person will be provided for somehow. But that's where we'll all be, or a lot of the people will be. There'll be giant corporations with lots of money, and there'll be lots of people at the bottom end.
Mm-hmm. There does seem to be big money behind this, and there's incremental moves towards stripping people's rights. I believe it's at the end of the month now. Here in Canada, you will not be able to board an airplane and to fly out of this country and to get the heck out of here if unless you have a vaccine. Are we really free in this country if you literally can't leave without having a vaccine?
No, they're taking our freedom away, and unfortunately, the majority of the people yet don't realize that if they take this one thing and get away with it, nobody protests, it simply happens and then carries on. It'll get worse and worse. They'll pick up other things, and eventually everything will be controlled. Some people are even suggesting that the vaccine, which we don't know exactly what it's made of, but some are suggesting that it's made of polycarbonate, I think, and what's the other one? It's a magnetic metallic, and also, I don't know what all is in there, but
most people don't.
No, nobody really knows. Well, somebody knows. And all of this was known for some time. I mean, this didn't happen all of a sudden. These things are, you'll have to agree, they're well organized somehow. They've been planning this for years. It's been in the planning for 10 years, some people say it. Scary stuff.
So you've seen how this has been playing out. You're probably a little more privy than most as to how these things can be carried out on the inside. I mean, we have civil servants essentially carrying out the deeds of the deep state. So how is it that, the top doctors, the top health officials, Bonnie Henry, Adrian Dixon, these guys, cannot see it for what it is? Do you think they're just kind of doing the status quo, towing the line? Do you think they actually believe the things they're saying today?
Wow. That's a very good question. I ask myself that every day. Do they really know this is happening, or are they so dumb that they can't see through it? I don't know. And strangely enough, it's the NDP, it's the Liberals, it's the Conservatives. They're all singing from the same song sheet.
Right.
It's crazy. It's the scariest thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Right. Like we're seeing, like terms "build back better" and the Great Reset being used by all of them. There seems to be continuity to it, right?
Continuity. Somebody bigger than the politicians are organizing this very effectively someplace. Yeah. And they're doling out a lot of money. Where it's all going, who's to say? I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. It's, it doesn't add up.
So you can see something is clearly not adding up. Something is leading towards more troubling times for Canadians. What are some of the things that people need to start, focusing on moving forward in the future here? If they want to protect their family and themselves and just try to navigate this new COVID-19 84 nightmare we're all forced to deal with here, what are maybe some words of advice or suggestions you would have for people to just navigate this new space that we've all found ourselves in?
First of all, I appreciate very much what you're doing. It's not being done enough. If I turn on any TV station, Canadian TV station today, chances are they're talking about COVID, 9 times out of 10. And when they're talking about COVID, it's all sort of one-way COVID. Do this, do that, you must do this, we've all got to get on board, all of that sort of stuff. So it's coming the media is very involved in this. How and where it all started and who's in charge, I don't know. Another scary thing. Yeah. The media is definitely one way on it. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, but what can be done? I guess we need more like you, Dan, to get out there and spread the message.
Right. We do have to counter this narrative at every step of the way. The propaganda is incredibly thick right now. One of the things I often tell my audience is you have to get to the point where you're no longer dependent on the government, dependent on the banks, or necessarily even dependent on the grocery stores. Because it seems, they're saying that these mandates are just for non-essential services right now. But do you think it could eventually lead to the essentials?
Oh, yeah. The next thing, they won't let me out of the house if you're not vaxxed. Right. No, it's... You don't know what it'll all lead to, but it's not good. And it's one of the reasons I guess I'm saying this, and a lot of people are beginning to say it, is because they're not leveling. It doesn't appear like they're leveling with us. Nobody's really telling us what's happening, how it's happening, why it's happening. And even when somebody comes out and says, well, hydrochloroquine or ivermectin, these may be remedies for the virus, they're not allowed. You're not even allowed to talk about it. As a matter of fact, if a doctor mentions something supportive of it, they'll lose their license. I don't know what's happening. It's scary.
So you've seen the censorship amongst the scientists, the doctors, the people who have been, the peer-reviewed journals that have been posted. They're not being aired on the mainstream media, right?
Definitely not. I had a health person, very nice person, that's very up on this, tell me that this is a corporate thing. This is a corporate pandemic. He calls it the corporate pandemic. That says something too. But you know what? They're afraid. Then he told me, if I told people publicly what I'm telling you, I'd lose my license. I'd be out.
Yeah.
So it's the worst thing I've seen in my whole life, and it's scary, and people have to begin questioning things. And the politicians should be involved. I don't hear from any politicians in the province here. Nobody's speaking out except, the Premier or Dix will get up and talk about how necessary it is for everybody to get the facts. Mm-hmm. But nobody's really explaining anything.
Yeah.
None of these politicians are even mentioning anything or questioning things or asking.
Yeah.
No.
Do you think they're afraid to speak out, or are they just as brainwashed as the rest of the TV watchers?
They can't all be the same. They can't all be brainwashed the same way. So I don't know what it is. They're scared. Maybe they're scared. Perhaps maybe they've been coerced somehow too. Who's to say?
Yeah. I mean, there's always hope, but do you think that they're, gonna? Is there a way out of this, or is COVID? Is this their end game? Is this it? Is this the big one that they're going for to formulate this world government, new world order system? Essentially, do you think this is going to be going away anytime soon, or is this something that people are just going to have to be dealing with for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, well, even that is kind of confusing, because they started out to suggest we needed one vaccination, then another vaccination. That was it. We'd all be safe, no more problems. Right. Well, that's not happening. The problems are still happening, and it's happening as much to the vaxxed people as it is to the non-vaxxed people. Mm-hmm. That's not getting out a whole lot, obviously, but that's the story I'm told by people that are in the know somewhat. Yeah. So, it's. I don't know. I don't know where it'll all end.
Well, that's a good point, where it starts with one vaccine, it moves to another, and then all of a sudden they're talking about thirds. In Israel, which is one of the most vaccinated countries on the planet, they are now suggesting you're going to have to get a booster shot every 6 months. And if you want to keep your vax passport in the green, continue to access society, you're going to have to get that booster shot every 6 months. And it seems to me, it's almost like they're setting up how would you say it, like a payment system on your immunity, a perpetual payment system on your immunity, where you're going to have to get this thing every 6 months if you want to comply. That's over there. Do you think we could see something like that come here as well?
Well, I understand the Prime Minister, Justin, has ordered enough vaccine to take care of us 8 times more. So you can expect not only a second and a third, you can expect another 8. Wow. Over what period, we don't know. Who all gets it? I imagine it'll be for everybody again. Right. And it could be that after you get 3 or 4, you can't stop anyway. You have to keep going. Who knows? I don't know. We're not being told. Mm-hmm. So it's the questions have to be asked. It's just too crazy.
Yeah. It is. I mean, as you said, you've been in this a long, long time, and as far as you can tell, this is probably some of the worst stuff you've seen, some of the biggest acceleration towards the world government, this new world order agenda that you've seen, right, as someone in government?
I never thought it would work. I honestly never. I've heard people talk about one world order. There are the globalists. They've been out there a long time. They're promoting that sort of thing. They believe in it. That's okay. I don't care. People can believe in their own stuff. That's fine. That's democracy. But it's now coming to be real because of the COVID. They couldn't do it without the COVID.
That's right.
All of this is happening without the COVID. I just the other day I still have a few business involvements. I just the other day received something new from my lawyers, more forms to fill out. Now they want to know not only what property you have, where it is, what it does, who's all involved, where the money came from, where the money's going. They say it's for money laundering. It's to prevent money laundering. Yeah, okay. Another form from the lawyers, another thing to fill in, another control by government, another control by government. It's driving me crazy. Yeah. But the little businesses will all drop out one day soon anyway. The big businesses right now are making lots of money. Right. I mean, the Costco's, the Walmarts, the big corporations, they're doing well.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like it's marching us into this Big Brother scenario where everybody's tracked, traced, and databased moving forward, right?
Yeah, we'll be totally controlled, totally controlled. Forget about freedoms after this because they've started it now. The mandates are the beginning, only the very beginning of things. Right. Why do they have Now, I have a friend that has... She's 78 years old. Her husband is 89. He became incontinent, so he had to go to a rest home. He's been there for 2 years. He's been visiting him at first, of course, through the windows. Then when they opened up, he was allowed to go in. She didn't get vaxxed. I don't know why she didn't. I didn't ask her. Maybe because of religion, maybe because of democracy, maybe because of something else. I don't know why. Maybe she's... Yeah, we forget about this real immunity that we all have. And that's being not only downplayed, it's like they're eliminating it. They're not talking about it. Anyway, she was told the other day that she couldn't see her husband anymore unless she was vaxxed. And she told her husband, and he said, then I want to die right now. What's happening in society is so bad. It's the vax, it's the non-vax, it's this group against that group. It's just splitting it all up. But that's how change comes to be. They need to make a mess of it before they can really introduce the changes.
Yeah. Well, I often ask people, where do they draw that line in the sand? You know, is it literally soldiers bursting down your front door and holding you down and sticking a needle in your arm? I mean, most people would draw the line there. Where did you draw the line? Probably a lot sooner than where we are right now, right?
Well, of course, I have a bit of an advantage in the sense that I tend to view things not only as a normal person working in the garden when I can or doing some business, but I also have this political experience, having been there 25 years. So I know what can happen or does happen behind the scenes.
Right.
Now, this is anything beyond I ever imagined, mind you. I didn't think this possible. I didn't think it possible, but it's happening.
Yeah. Shocking to say the least. I didn't think, I mean, I knew it was possible. I just didn't think it would happen so quickly and so easily without any kind of, any fight back. It's just, I'm as shocked as you are about where we're at today.
You know, it's amazing. The countries that seem to be resisting it a little bit so far are kind of the countries that were closest to the Stalinist type of government way back. It's Poland. It's Hungary, it's Czechoslovakia, Czech and Slovakia, yeah, and then of course Norway and Sweden and Denmark. Those countries are sort of resisting and asking the questions. That's a good thing. That needs to happen. Canadians particularly, Canadians tend to take things much more easily than anybody. Yeah. But also these open border things that you see happening, that's by design. Right. You watch the open border is soon going to expand much beyond the Mexican border. The Canadian border will soon be quite open, if it isn't already. So it's the open border thing is also part of this globalist thing. Open borders everywhere.
Right. Well, I mean, you can't have a global, one united government unless you do away with those borders eventually.
It's coming.
Right.
It's coming. It's part of the program.
Yeah. Wow, it's just, I can't believe we're actually here. You know, like you said, it's surprising and shocking. I guess, do you have any final thoughts on just where you see this playing out, and more specifically, you know, what people really need to do in terms of questioning this, maybe growing their own food, maybe just being not in debt, just, you know, basically, you know, what do you think are some of the things people need to focus on now moving forward?
Well, growing your own food is a good thing, especially these days, because you don't know what's going to happen as far as the food supply for a variety of reasons. However, if we go to a globalist government, you'll be growing it on government property. And if you're growing it on government property, the government will want control. And they'll set up a bureaucracy and a ministry. And the cost will go to all of those bureaucrats. And there will be little left to grow your lettuce, your celery, your beans, your whatever. Mm-hmm. It's not, I don't know, maybe I'm stretching it too far, but somebody's got to start stretching it because it's happening.
Maybe we're at the point where prayer is what we need. You know what I mean? Maybe we need divine intervention at this stage in the game, right?
Well, we need lots of that, but that's almost a foreign thing these days. Right. There's not too much of that, not enough, unfortunately. And I'll go to church this afternoon or tomorrow morning, but it's very limited as to the number of people that are allowed. And they opened up for a time. I think they've closed it again. And but people are getting out of the habit. Yeah. So that's exactly what they want to see happen. And strangely enough, I don't see even the religions coming together. I mean, I don't care if you're Muslim, if you're a Christian, or if you're whatever you are. Why don't they come together and say, look, something's happening that's not right. We need to address this together. Yeah. Let's stand up for our beliefs and what we're preaching. There's not enough of that. No. I'm disappointed.
Yeah. Me too. I agree. I think, community right now is going to be so important moving forward if we're actually going to want to, defeat this thing, or at least push it back enough so we can continue to live our lives the way we want to live our lives. Yeah, I guess that's it. It's pretty shocking again to believe that we're here. But once again, I just want to thank you for giving us your thoughts on it. Somebody who's been privy on the inside, who have seen these things, greatly appreciated.
I just hope that some of the politicians are listening, and I'm hoping the politicians will take a position and start speaking out about all of this as well. Ask the questions. Tell us things. It doesn't matter what it is. Tell us. Even the things we don't want to hear, tell us anyway. We need to hear. And also, I would hope that governments would, I think they've stupidly turned down possible remedies like the ones mentioned, ivermectin or hydrochloroquine. And there may be others. And I suppose if they were recognized and allowed, they're allowed for other things, so why aren't they allowed now? But if they were allowed, people will start researching and coming up with things. I imagine if there's somebody now, someplace in the world that has another remedy that could cure this virus, they would be silenced very quickly. Mm-hmm.
Well said. I mean, ivermectin, chloroquine, vitamin D, exercise, the sun, good food. There's so many things people need to be doing. And politicians essentially stepping up to the plate. And like you said, giving us both sides of the story so people can make up their own minds about this thing. So,
don't take away our freedom. That's more valuable than anything else. If we lose our freedom, we're done. Not only we, future generations will be done. It'll be finished.
Folks, listen to this man. He's been on the inside. He knows what he's talking about, and he's absolutely right. Once you give up those essential freedoms, it's very difficult to get them back. And that's the stage we're in today. So we need to continue to fight these incremental moves towards all-out fascism, towards all-out this global communistic order that these people are trying to set up. And we're going to need you guys to help us do that. So once again, Bill, thank you so much for taking the time again to speak with us today. It's very greatly appreciated that we could do this follow-up interview with you.
I appreciate you doing this very much. Thank you for doing it.
We all want truth. The truth will set you free. All right. I think that's good. I just noticed, I'm at 29, and that's going to...
Am I ever in trouble?
In trouble?
Yeah.
Why?
Oh, well, you can get away with it because that's your role, right?
Right.
But me speaking out now, I'm in trouble.
Well...
What do I do?
Well, hey,
You're
we
still
need
on the
more.
right side of history.
Exactly. We need the brave people to speak
Yeah.
up. That's just it. Nobody's doing it. Nobody's speaking up. So.
Oh, this just automatically stopped.
Okay,
But
yeah,
it
that's-
literally just did it
I
now.
knew
But
it
you
was
know what?
happening.
I've listened to a lot of interviewers. He is the very best.
Oh,
I appreciate
Without
that.
it, no, you are the best.
Oh
that's
yeah.
awesome.
I've listened to many over the years, and I already said to Lillian earlier, Dan, I remember Dan. I don't remember any of these people over so many years.
Right.
I remember Dan
Remember
because
Dan?
he's the best.
Oh, that's
Right
so
on.
great.
You proved it again today.
Wow. Appreciate that.
You do it perfectly.
Yeah.
It means
Well,
a
thank
lot.
you
You're not
very
going to
much.
say
you.
things I might not have said otherwise, but you do it so well.
Right.
That
Appreciate
means a
that.
lot
Yeah.
coming from someone like yourself.
Yeah,
Mitch.
really appreciate that for sure.